Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us on this. Hopefully, it's a beautiful Wednesday wherever you are. I'm in Chicago. Donna's in Massachusetts. I'm Allison Manley, Director of Marketing here at Canopy. And today we're having a webinar just for the folks at UCSF about how to do an effective content audit. As many of you know, Canopy designs, builds, and supports websites for clients who want to make a positive impact. And a bit about Donna Bungard. She began her Drupal career as a designer and themer. Then she transitioned over to the project management and strategy side of things. So she does have a very good breadth of how a whole project cohesively works. So her range of skills help her effectively lead teams as one of our support project managers. She also is a certified professional in accessibility core competencies with the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. So she knows quite a bit about accessibility rules. A reminder, as always, that there is a Q&A button. Yep, it's there down at the bottom of your screen. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can throw them in there as they come, and we will address them all at the end. Donna's presentation is only going to be about 15 minutes, so there will be time left over for those questions. So from here, I'm going to turn off my video and turn it over to Donna.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. It is so great to be here and talking with you today. As Allison mentioned, my name is Donna. I'm one of the senior support project managers here, and that's just a whole bunch of alphabet soup. But essentially, I learn a lot about accessibility, content management, content strategy, all these beautiful things. So here we are, more than halfway through our summer series. As we enter September, I don't know how that happened. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about content audits and how to do that effectively. So first, why bother? Second, we're going to talk about where we start. And we always want to begin with your end users, how to keep it a little organized, and where to go from here. So with that, why audit? Well, first of all, a content audit is the opportunity to really take a close look at what you're putting out there, because so many people really only know us by our web presence. So a content audit is really being able to stop and say, is this still who I am as an organization? Is this still communicating how and to whom and what I want it to say? And you have to be able to really think critically of, is this offering the kind of value my users are looking for? So for each piece of content you're going to take a look at, but overall, is this something that really represents you well? Is it something that maybe is just out of date, older, or is just maybe something you really don't focus on anymore? So maybe get rid of that. And then finally repurpose it. And we'll talk about this a little bit more after. But because something is old or stale, doesn't mean it doesn't have value. And we're going to try to talk about how to repurpose that content to breathe more life into all of that. Because I love this quote, content is the reason a search begins in the first place. When your users are looking for you, they're not actually looking for you. They're looking for your content. They're looking for what you have to say, what value and what you have to offer them. So more than half the companies out there say the most technical improvements they've been able to get is from updating that content. So where do we do? We're going to start with your end users. Our users are the reason we do anything. So first of all, we want to know your personas, and we don't only want to know them as person one or person two. We want them to be Sally or Sam. And we want to understand, why is that user coming to your site? How did they get there? What in this whole omni-channel experience that we're all living in? Are they coming from their phone? Are they on a tablet somewhere? Are they at their desktop at work? Are they sitting at their home on their laptop after hours and just scanning while they're trying to, watch everything else around them? How are they getting to you? And why? What are their pain points? What are they looking for you to solve? And who influences them? Now, that last part is really important too, because there's a lot of different things that influence us. In the world of accessibility, I always try to make sure people think about the influencers there too, because I may not identify as being disabled, but growing up, I was the only one in my household who did. Everybody in my household had some sort of disability. So when I see a site, I'm like, oh, my sister who doesn't have very good hearing would not be able to partake in this. Or if she did, everybody in the county would hear about it. Therefore, she's an influencer of me just because of that experience. So we want to keep that in mind of who is influencing your users and how is that going to impact the lens at which they look at your content through. And then what does success look like? Essentially, one thing I want to bring up about this, and I think I say this later, is the key, the cornerstone of all content strategy is your user being able to be the hero of their own story. Now, that story could be kind of boring, and it could be, how do I get to your office to sign a form? Or, my favorite example is I bought socks on Amazon. It's not an exciting story, but darn it, I was able to go there, look for my goal, spot my goal, achieve my goal, and complete my task. And therefore, I was the hero of my own narrative. Your users have to be able to do that too. When they go to your site with a goal in mind for why they're there, they need to be able to become the hero of their own story. So to do that, to kind of figure out where they're coming from, look first at your analytics. I understand that your team, some people use Google Analytics, some may use a Site Improve, I think it was. There's a couple of opportunities you have to look at that analytics, but understand where they're coming from, what devices they're coming to you on. If there's a really high mobile experience, really stop and analyze that experience for those users. Maybe there's a geography or a language, any of that information. There's a ton of information available to you. Go ahead, dive in. And if you have videos like YouTube, for example, and Vimeo, they provide analytics there about your users, who's watching them, the frequency. Honestly, I'm still even just learning all the neat stuff about YouTube analytics. And Google also offers, I know, like Google Data Studio, and you can tie into some of these other places so you can visualize that data pretty easily to get it out, to get that strong feel of who your users are, where they're coming from, and what are they doing. And then there's other tools available to you. Moz is an amazing resource, and they do have some free tools available. I recommend you take a look at them. It's going to tell you, who is your competitive landscape for keywords. SEMrush will tell you the same thing. Again, they're both limited at the free version, but there's options there. There's paid versions as well. But tools like that, sometimes if just looking at that and saying, wow, my keywords that search engines are using to get to my site are not at all what, my competitors or other people in my industry and my focus are talking about. And that might be a big key to say, maybe I need to relook at my content through the lens of the user I'm trying to speak to. Maybe those keywords aren't coming up because I'm not talking about them. Just one thing to keep in mind, search engines have gotten so smart, you don't actually always have to use the same terms. It's not like back, when I was back doing the actual HTML developing of websites here, where I was, looking for keywords. You can go long tail keywords. You can go over the basic gist of it. Search engines are smarter and are making connections between what we're saying and what people are looking for and meaning. Google Search Console, by the way, is a tool to see if there's errors on the site with how Google is researching it. Google Data Studio is a data visualization tool. They're all part of that big Google suite, but it's a different tool. No problem. And Kevin, I'll go back to your question in a minute. It's just a longer question. I haven't been able to scan it while chatting, and I want to leave lots of time in the end. So let's keep this organized. Where do you want to begin with your content on it? First of all, you have to identify scope. Sometimes sites can be hundreds and hundreds of pages, and maybe you don't have the time or the team to be able to go through them all. So first, set scope. Now, I always say to go with the most trafficked pages first. Pick the top 10, the top 20, whatever you have the resources, even if it's the top 5. Pick something to start with. You can always add more, take it in chunks. That whole, how you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Same idea. If you're looking to get rid of low-hanging fruit, maybe you want to go and sort your content in your analytics by what's getting the least traffic. If nothing's been visited in a year, that might be a keen group of pages you'll debate whether or not you want to remove or repurpose. But that's great for low-hanging fruit, but I always say start at least with that top 10, 20, because you want to look at what your users are seeing the most. So there's a couple of approaches you can take, but definitely start there and define the chunks you're going to do. And also a little side note, try to give yourself a timetable. We're all get busy. And I don't know about you, but sometimes that squeakiest wheel is the one. So if I don't have to give myself a due date on something, it'll just keep getting pushed kind of off camera a little bit. So just make that plan, give yourself some structure around it. Then create a spreadsheet. I'm going to show you one in a minute. It's going to help you identify, well, basically keep you on track, because when we read our own site content, we're looking at it as, oh, I know what I'm talking about. This is great. But if you're analyzing it this is an awareness stage, like a real introductory stage for persona handyman Jack. I'm sorry, I have no idea. I'm making that up. But for this persona, and their call to action really doesn't exist. I know that they should go over to this other page, but I didn't really put a call to action here. So by having that spreadsheet, you're forcing your mindset into your users, the lens of your users, to help really guide you through this process. And then keep, delete, repurpose. It's going to kind of be a mantra here. Keep, delete, repurpose. If it's doing what it needs to, you might want to put a little check mark of, hey, we want to refresh a little things just to keep it neat. But overall, if it's doing its job, let it be. If it's out of date, that really low-hanging fruit I mentioned might be something. Or maybe, as I said, it's just something that you didn't realize you had an old blog post about something that's really not relevant anymore. Don't be afraid to get rid of it. It's not serving you. It's not serving your users as much as it might be, oh man, 4 years ago, it took me 2 hours to write that. That's, get rid of it. It's like cleaning out your closet. Nobody likes to do it, but we need to. And then that repurpose state. And we're going to talk a little bit more about repurposing in a second. So this is that spreadsheet I mentioned. And what I always do is I make sure I put the page title first, because as much as this URL thing is important, and as a PM at a digital agency, I shouldn't call it a URL thing, but really when you're doing this, it's a URL thing. You want to have the page title first. You want to try to remember where in the site you're trying to focus. What kind of content is it? Is it a blog? Is it a landing page? Is it a marketing page? Is it your home page? Is it a contact page? What content type is it? Now, depending on if you're doing a site builder site versus something different, that might be more limited, but it's still relevant. A quick description. What are you trying to get across on this page? Who are you talking to? What is that CTA? A hero. Nobody can be the hero of their own story if they don't know where to go next. So you want to have your big CTAs of contact us, sign us up, do this, do that. And maybe you want a small CTA, kind of a micro conversion of watch my video. That is also a path forward, but you always want to keep that user walking down that journey. And where in the journey are they? Are they just starting out with you? Have they already decided you are the bomb and they want to go with you and they think you're great? Where are you in that process, in that relationship with them? And go from there. And then what is the goal of the page? What do you want them to accomplish, or what are they trying to accomplish? What are some words or phrases that you're seeing come up a lot on that page? Is that maybe something that is or isn't relevant? You can look at that after. What imagery is there? Is that maybe your content is great, but your imagery is, 4 years out of date, and that, or right now, maybe you want to update imagery to show masks. This is a reality of our existence, and representation matters. So maybe that's something you need to do. So make note. Check out when it was last updated, and then that hard part of keep, delete, repurpose. And then give yourself a few notes. So later on when you're referencing back, you can say, oh, I had an idea. We could repurpose this as here's a few different ways. First of all, articles. You can make a new blog post. You have something that's, 2, 3, 4 years old. The data might be relevant, even if your content itself has gotten a bit stale. Revisit it, write something new, even call out, hey, in this 2020 world, X, Y, and Z is still important, and here's why. You have all of your data, you have all of your things. It's a low level of lift to create this meaningful content that's going to grab your user. Videos are awesome. Maybe the content is just really just not going to grab your audience. But what is it? Millions of hours of YouTube or videos are watched every single day. Make a video. People are really interested. Make sure it's captioned or transcripts. Sorry, I have to put on that hat. But get that video out there for people. Show them something new, something interesting, something engaging. Interview someone. You have the senior subject matter expert available to you still. They wrote this article, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I don't know, a while back. You know what? Hey, I came across this and I feel this is relevant to our users now. What do you think about this? How do you feel it's still relevant? What are your new findings? What have you been doing in this area since? Yada, yada, yada. And then social. Sometimes you want to just show off, hey, this is a forgotten gem, but this is great. This is valuable. This is something you are going to want to hear about. Don't forget, this is something we provided to you. Let's take a look at it. And maybe that audience, maybe some of that audience who only started following you more recently is going to be like, wow, I never knew that was there. So repurpose, repurpose, repurpose. You have a lot of value right there in front of you. So go ahead and use it. And then defining next steps. Update personas. Cornell University actually has a neat tool they have out there that can help you see the disability statistics by ethnicity, age, gender, geographic location within the US, things like that. If you need a tool to dive down into maybe that's good. But update your personas in general. Make sure they're really relevant. Maybe something like online learning is more of an important thing right now. I know it is in my world. There's a lot of stuff you can always add to your users. Get that psychogenic data as well as the actual metrics to really round out that Jack or Sally. Analyze that content. Be critical. As much as we work on all of this and it's hard, be critical. And then just take action. Make that plan. Even if you're only doing 5 pages at a time, when you're done that chunk, decide what you're going to do on it, action it, or assign it to team members who are going to action on it, and move on to the next. Keep it steadily moving forward. And then replan. None of this is a one and done. Content always needs to stay fresh, stay interesting, be wonderful, because that strategy, the best strategy, regardless of your industry, your focus, your content, your whatever, is that your users are going to be feeling good, like they accomplished what they set out to reading your work. So Q&A.
All right, sorry. I was a little slow there on this update.
No, it's okay. I also see some stuff in the chat too. I haven't seen the Q&A window, but I did see the chat. So,
well, why don't you start with that one from Ann Baker. What is a proactive way to safeguard SEO rankings while removing the content?
Definitely put in redirects. That's a good way of doing it. Too many redirects can get search engines cranky, but overall, I think you're safe. If you're doing this regularly, it shouldn't be a huge overhaul. Um, and then, frankly, if it's highly trafficked, maybe you won't want to remove it. Maybe that tells you you need to repurpose it or redirect the user to some other location.
Okay.
And Kevin had an older question. I'm sorry. Does it spark joy? What is, I know, right? Um, so what is the importance of keywords and naming, in other words? I would use tools like Moz or SEMrush to see what keywords users are using to get to your site. You can also see a little bit in Google, or if you have on-site search, look in Google to see, or Site Improver, what have you, in your analytics to see what words they're using when searching around your site. That's a great way to go ahead and make sure you're using similar terminology. And if it's something that's maybe even a little bit off close, maybe there's an opportunity to write an article of, hey, what's the difference between X and Y? And you can kind of bring that forward as a learning opportunity.
We have some questions from Jenica, Donna,
Okay.
basically about providing some of the references that you mentioned, like the reference from Cornell and the sharing of the content audit Excel sheet. Are we able to share both those resources? I'm assuming yes.
Yeah, absolutely. When this gets sent out later, I'll have a resources slide at the end, because frankly, I hadn't actually thought about sharing about like Data Studio or what have you until I was talking. So this resources slide isn't exactly up to date. So give me a couple minutes after this to go ahead and update that, and we'll share it out with the rest of those resources.
Yeah, which should be by end of day tomorrow, because we'll get the video up and everything for those who missed it. And another question, what are a few approaches to balance business and company goals with persona goals?
That's a good question. Frankly, they should be aligned if you're talking to the right personas. For example, if your user is, I'm just going to use admissions because it's nice and generic. If your user is looking towards admissions, your business goal should be to get those to get increase user, increase knowledge of you, awareness, to get users to want to apply, therefore getting people to apply. Your user goal is to find the right school for them. So therefore you're wanting to showcase who you are, the awareness, why they should apply, how it's beneficial to them. It's just it's pivoting a point of view, but it should be the same dots on the journey. Does that make sense? Anne? There we go. And did that make sense to you?
Well, I have another question in the meantime. Another one, which is a great one. It's about governance. Any tips for making content audit a priority for teams and managers? Because sometimes it's hard to get buy-in from people who think it is the sole job of the communications team.
Absolutely. That's a challenge for a lot of different groups to get that ownership. And part of me thinks that I would love to almost do a one-on-one comparison. If you have work that other team had put together versus work the communications team had and said, look, your work is speaking to this persona better. Look at these metrics. Look at the data. More people are engaging or taking the next step after reading it because you are the subject matter experts. If you want that level of engagement, we need your support, because we will support you, but we can't be as knowledgeable as you may be. And that's my first thought on that. I could think a little more if you would like, but that's my initial thought, because it's hard. Everyone's strapped for time and just so busy, and it's hard to get buy-ins. But in the end, if they want the appropriate representation. They need to be engaged with you, and if you can show them data that backs that, your position will be stronger. Does that answer your question?
Jenica, let us know. Okay. All right, great. Well, no more questions, anyone? It looks like Anne would like to connect with you directly. That's fine. I can connect you to, oh, and Jenica's got a longer question.
Oh.
Can you answer this in 3 minutes, or should we set up an email between?
All right. Let's see. You reference sites having hundreds of pages to the ideal theory. One-stop digital shop. Blah. How can I make the case on the main site? Oh, there should be a microsite. Let's connect off. I'm not going to be able to give you a really thoughtful answer in 3 minutes. I guess the Cliff's notes would be how important is this to them, and if that's a value, then maybe if the content is that much of value to them, maybe it needs to be treated with those, white gloves. But again, that's just an off the cuff. I need more time to give you something a little bit deeper.
All right, any more questions with the little time we have left? Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today and spending some time with us on your Wednesday. As I mentioned, we will be sending out the recording and any resources probably end of day tomorrow if you want to share it with others. And of course, Canopy would love to help you with any content audit needs that you have. So just reach out to us at hello@canopy.com. And that's it for today. Have a great rest of your week.